Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Tier 9 Premium Mission Reward tank, currently available in World of Tanks, and it has been available for quite some time now. The T-55A, except it's the German Democratic Republic T-55A, available in the German tech tree, although technically it belonged to the Warsaw Pact. It's an East German tank. The T-55 first appeared in 1958 and at the time was still classed as a medium rather than a main battle tank. The T-55 was essentially a T-54, but a T-54 that had all of the existing design modifications incorporated into the design of the T-54, as well as a couple of new features specific to the T-55 which basically made this a completely new tank. Existing T-54s were then modernised and upgraded until they were mostly undistinguishable from the new T-55s. Combined production figures for the T-54s and the T-55s and the upgraded T-54s, which were then known somewhat confusingly as the T-54-55, reached something in the region of 60,000 units produced. But if you take into consideration the locally produced Czech and Polish T-55s, that number reaches a staggering 85,000 tanks delivered. And don't forget, when these T-55s and T-54-55s were in service, the Soviet Union was also capable of fielding 22,000 T-62s, 13,000 T-64s, and 25,000 T-72s. That's a lot of tanks. Where did they find the crews? Oh wait, we're talking about Russia here, aren't we? Okay, never mind. Silly question. So what kind of changes went into the T-55 in order to make it distinct from the T-54? Well, the main package of modifications incorporated were to do with nuclear, chemical and biological protection. The T-55 could survive a 14 kiloton nuclear detonation, a tactical warhead, at a range of 300 meters from the ground zero of the blast. The crew were dead, of course, but the tank would survive. It might be a bit hot, but you could still reuse it. To be completely fair, the crew did have a reasonable chance of surviving a 14 kiloton blast at ranges in excess of 700 meters from ground zero. In addition, the tank also had a brand spanking new V55 12-cylinder 4-stroke 1-chamber 38.88 litre water-cooled diesel engine capable of producing 581 brake horsepower, more than on the T-54, in order to cope with the extra weight of the T-55. So where did all this extra weight come from? Well, not from the gun. The T-55 essentially had the same D10T 100mm gun as was equipped on the T-54 before it. Although it did have a new bore evacuator, it was to all intents and purposes the same gun, but the T-55 did get modernised and upgraded ammunition. The high explosive anti-tank ammunition supplied for the T-55 could penetrate up to 390mm of armour, that's 15 inches, and that's significantly more than the high explosive anti-tank premium ammunition on the T-55A can penetrate in World of Tanks. The gun was stabilised in both the horizontal and vertical planes. Infrared sights became standard, with both the commander and the gunner receiving new sights. A new fire protection system was fitted to the engine compartment. The commander's ring-mounted 12.7mm machine gun was eventually dropped as it was completely useless against modern jets. The turret armour was thickened at the front, although it was thinned at the rear of the turret in order to keep the overall weight down to the limits that could be handled by the suspension and the transmission, which were exactly the same as the suspension and transmission on the T-54. Although the T-55 did get new road wheels and new tracks, which were a lot more durable than those fitted to the T-54. So how does the T-55A, which is a modernised version of the T-55, different to the T-55? Well, to all intents and purposes, they're the same tank. The only real difference is that the T-55A incorporated further advances in nuclear, bacteriological and chemical warfare protection. As far as its combat service is concerned, the T-54-55 and the T-55 have seen action in the 1956 invasion of Hungary, the martial law declared in Poland, the Yugoslavian wars in the 1990s, the 1967 Six-Day War, the 1970 Jordanian Civil War, the 1973 Yom Kippur War, the 1980s Lebanon and Iran-Iraq War, not to mention the 1991 and 2001 coalition wars against Iraq. Until recently, T-55s also participated on both sides in the Syrian civil war. In the Far East, T-54s and T-55s fought in Vietnam with the North Vietnamese army. They also participated in the Indian-Pakistani wars, the Cambodian wars, and the Sri Lankan civil war against the Tamil Tigers. Meanwhile, in Africa, the Ugandan-Tanzanian wars, the Angolan and Mozambique wars, and more recently, the Libyan civil war. It's fairly safe to say that this tank has been around the block a few times. It's seen some shit. The T-55 and its variants have fought every single Cold War Western tank ever introduced into service, and usually didn't do too well against them. In fact, until very recently, combat performance against the T-55 was the yardstick by which Western tank effectiveness was measured. The tank has been in service with over 50 different countries and armies, and in some cases, even in unmodified form, is still in service even today. So how can you go about getting your hands on one of these babies in World of Tanks? Well, it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick. The T-55A is the third in the personal reward mission tanks, which begin with the Stug 4, continue with the T-28 concept, and conclude with the Object 260 Tier 10 Soviet heavy tank via the T-55A at Tier 9 in the German tech tree. You're either going to have to be very, very, very good or very, very, very patient in order to get one of these things in your garage. But should you be good enough or patient enough, this is what you can expect. This is Shadow Assassin Mitchell. He's only just unlocked the T-55A. This is only the 7th game he's ever played in it, after sweating bullets for several months, getting those personal missions completed in order to unlock this tank. And as a reward for his efforts, he's got himself a very, very capable Tier 9 medium. Now, comparisons with the T-54 are of course going to be inevitable. The T-55 has pretty much exactly the same D10T2S 100mm gun as the T-54, and like the T-54, when it's using that gun, it has shockingly bad penetration for a Tier 9 medium tank, only 201mm with standard ammunition. However, like the T-54, it has incredibly good premium high explosive anti-tank ammunition with 330mm penetration. Both tanks have exactly the same pretty good turrets with 200mm of rounded and sloped armour at the front, 160 at the sides and 65 at the rear. However, the T-55 does have significantly weaker upper glacis hull armour at the front. It's only 100mm thick compared to the T-54's 120mm. Both tanks do have the same 80mm of side armour, however, which means you can side scrape just as well in the T-55A as you can in the T-54. Despite both tanks having pretty much the same gun and the same ammunition, the T-55A has significantly better soft and hard gun characteristics than the T-54. Both tanks do the same 320 average damage, but the T-55A aims faster, loads faster, fires faster, therefore has higher damage per minute, is also more accurate, as well as more accurate while on the move and more accurate while the hull is turning. When it comes to a comparison between the mobility of these two tanks on paper, it would seem that the T-54 gets the better deal. It's certainly got a better top speed of 56 versus the T-55A's 50 km per hour, and it's going to get there faster as well. It has a better power to weight ratio. It's a lighter tank with a more powerful engine. The T-54, with suspension, engine, turret and gun upgraded, but before you add equipment modules, weighs just over 35 tons and has a 700 horsepower engine. By comparison, the T-55A only has a 580 horsepower engine and weighs 37.5 tons in exactly the same condition. In fact, the only Tier 9 medium tank that has a worse power to weight ratio than the T-55A is the American T-54 E1. However, the T-55A is blessed with the best ground resistance values on its suspension of any Tier 9 medium tank in World of Tanks. To put it simply, there are very, very few tanks in World of Tanks that grip the ground the way the T-55A does, and this superior ground resistance makes up for, and in some cases even surpasses, the fantastic mobility of the T-54. And it's not just in the case of ground resistance where the T-55A is the best tank at Tier 9. It also turns at 50 degrees per second and turns the turret at 46 degrees per second. Again, better than any other Tier 9 medium tank. And when you take that into consideration with the soft handling stats of the gun, the superior accuracy while on the move and the superior accuracy while turning the hull of the tank means that the T-55A is one of the best dogfighting medium tanks in World of Tanks. And Shadow Assassin Mitchell here is certainly very, very happy with his. Remember, this is only the 7th game he's ever played in this tank. Although this game is not going too well for his team so far, but he's spotted a full health T10 as he's making a break across this field. And the T10 does have problems of his own. He's got a T-28 prototype and a Ferdinand shooting at him from the front. And this is your typical medium tank playstyle here, taking advantage of other tanks that have far, far bigger problems than you. The AMX-12T is nothing more than an annoyance. The T-55A, on the other hand, yeah. T10 made the... well, he didn't have a lot of options at that point. He turned the turret, and that basically made him an easy kill for the Ferdinand. Mitchell's come back over to the western side of the map because the team are basically collapsing over here, although abandoning the eastern side of the map has left an IS-3 on his team kind of high and dry against what looks to be at least one enemy WZ-111. However, Mitchell has a platoon mate in the VK-4502 who's just died holding off the massed ranks of enemy tanks that have been sweeping up around from the western side of the map. And with the destruction, his first kill, of that enemy WZ-111, that's confirmed for Mitchell that the IS-3 that he's left down there in the southeastern end of the map only has one enemy WZ-111 to face, although it turns out that WZ-111 has in fact killed the IS-3. Mitchell can't do anything about that right now as he has slightly bigger problems of his own in the shape of an M103, an IS and an IS-2 who are all making a push on his base, and his team's only remaining heavy tank is disappearing to the east in order to head down south and engage that injured WZ-111, which just leaves Mitchell and two tank destroyers to defend the base. And the friendly Ferdinand is a one-shot kill. Bounces a shot from the KV-4 on the turret there, and is kind of unlucky with that shot. KV-4, come on, no, not going to reload quite in time to put a shot into the side of the KV-4's turret. Mitchell appears to be undetected at this point, however, and he's managed to score a crit. Did he immobilize? Yeah, he has. He's immobilized the KV-4. He needs to kill this guy quick, however. Good. Now, he's already nailed the IS. The M103 has been taken out by the T-28 prototype. The Ferdinand is still hanging on by the skin of his teeth. That just leaves the IS-2 and the T-21, neither of which are much of a threat, although the KV-5 may be making an appearance very, very soon. Bounces a shot from the IS-2, and it's pretty much all over for the IS-2 now at this point, as he tries to hide from the guns of the two tank destroyers in front of him, and that just makes him a sitting duck for Mitchell. In fact, Mitchell, watch this, he's not even going to look, he's just using auto-aim as he bounces a shot from the T-21 and executes the IS-2 with auto-aim, rams the T-21 to death for his 5th kill. And I think if this was Tank Olympics, even the Russian judge would be forced to give him at least 9 points for that move. Now then, well, the mystery of what happened to the KV-5 has at least been resolved. Have a look down at the map. Do you remember the friendly WZ-111 who completely abandoned the base defence in order to go looking for what he probably assumed was going to be an easy kill on the enemy WZ-111 who killed the IS-3? Well, he's found him, eventually. Somehow he's managed to get past him without seeing him, and then have the enemy WZ-111 pop up from his rear, and now he's got himself caught in a KV-5 WZ-111 sandwich. And now he, of course, is yelling for help. And where were you when we needed you? Well, anyway. Mitchell's doing what he can. There's the KV-5. Scored a hit. He's probably going to be too late to save the WZ-111, but while they're busy kicking the WZ-111... oh, it's an engine fire! No, he's managed to put it out. Come on, reload. He's not going to get the kill, is he? No. Well, it was worth the shot anyway. So, the WZ-111 is... no, he's dead. Well, that was pretty inevitable. So that leaves the KV-5 and the enemy WZ-111, and they both know he's coming. Now remember, the accuracy on this gun is 0.32. The T-54, with what's essentially the same gun, 0.35 accuracy. And that's good enough to decapitate the KV-5. However, pausing in the middle of the field like that has given the WZ-111 the opportunity that he needed to come up and score a big old hit right through that vulnerable 100mm of upper glacis hull armour. And he's going to pop out and try to do it again, but this time he managed to take it on the turret. WZ-111, of course, has lousy gun depression, and now he's in a dogfight with a heavy tank. However, The T-55A does have fantastic ground resistance, but here he's having to go up a hill to get around and circle the WZ-111, and that's where the comparatively weak engine is almost going to get him killed. Almost, but not quite. And that is a high caliber Top Gun and ace tanker for Shadow Assassin Mitchell in what is only his 7th game in the T-55A Tier 9 German Premium Mission Reward tank. 6,200 damage to go with his 7 kills, and he also did 1,500 spotting and assistance damage. I think you'll agree this is one of, if not arguably the best, dogfighting medium tanks available in World of Tanks. And this is what you have to look forward to if you're currently engaged on that long and arduous slog through the personal reward missions. However, the T-55A, like the T-54, does come with a bit of a hidden sting in the tail. This is a bloody expensive tank to run because of the 201mm of penetration with standard ammunition on its gun. The T-55A is more accurately described as a reward tank than a premium tank. It doesn't get that bonus credit modifier, and with the shockingly bad 201mm of penetration with its armor-piercing ammunition, you're probably going to be firing a lot of premium ammunition in this tank, and that means you're probably going to be losing a lot of money in this tank. Mitchell, despite getting an ace tanker and doing over 6,000 damage, actually lost nearly 40,000 credits on this game. It's probably safe to say you're not going to be using this tank to farm credits in the same way you would a Tier 8 Premium, for example. This tank is definitely not a moneymaker, but it is a fantastic tank. And this is what you've got waiting for you on the 3rd stage of the personal reward missions in World of Tanks, the T-55A German Tier 9 medium tank. Hope you enjoyed today's video, folks, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.